Do you love that timeless, minimal, classic look? Then you might have Classic Essence. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Milan and I'm a personal stylist, and today we're talking about Classic Essence and how I view Classic Essence. Just a quick reminder, just because your facial features matches the essence does not mean you have to dress like this. Because if you don't resonate with the style or the vibe or any of it, and you don't like it, don't wear it. I don't care if someone tells you you have the most classical face. If you don't like it, it's not worth it. On the flip side, if your personality really fits this, but you don't have any of the facial features or you don't look classic or the typical classic face, you can also still wear this, especially if this really resonates with you on the style level, personal level, whatever. Does not matter. Okay, so personality-wise, I find that classics are very logical people. They tend to be very structured in their lives, very organized, practical, they're highly logical at times, and they are just that. They're put together, or they seem put together, they look put together, their lives are fairly put together. They like structure, they like routine. They're not very incredibly spontaneous necessarily, but they're not extremely strict on the routine and on the, on that side of things either. And by put together, I mean they look really clean. Yes, on the outside they look, clean looking. Everything is well put together, but also in their lives. They could have very minimal, clean homes. They like timeless things that feel they don't have a ton of upkeep necessarily. They may be more prompt. Maybe they are the organizers in the friend group. Basically, when you see or interact with the classic, you think, man, they really have their shit together. They really got it together. That's a classic. They're grown-ups, they're mature. They have this silent confidence to them. It's not intimidating like dramatic intimidation. It's more of they have their shit together. Oh my gosh, they really got it going. They know what they're doing. They seem knowledgeable. That's what a classic looks like. It's not intense dramatic. It's just, wow, okay. They would know things. They seem clever. They seem confident, but they don't need to be loud about it. They don't need to be, they're not shy necessarily. Generally, they're admired for that they seem mature, they're well-spoken, they seem like they could teach a class on something. That's kind of where that academia thing comes from, is from classics for that reason, because they seem knowledgeable. And just in general, they're not extremes anything. If you're a very extreme classic, you're not going to be, extremely laid back or extremely structured. You're gonna find yourself kind of in the middle. You can go with the flow sometimes, but you also do like when things are organized. It's like an aspirational intimidation. I just made that up, I think, and it makes sense. But for a classic, it's so natural to just be that, and they have always been like that. It's not something that they worked towards. They were just always kind of the friend that was put together, the friend that had it going on, the friend that, seemed really organized. And what I mean by they're not really intimidating is that when you speak to them, they're very kind, gentle, and they can be, have like a warmth to them, but it's not extremely approachable like a natural would be, and it's not intimidating or unapproachable like a dramatic, and it's not unsure like a ethereal would be. It's very standard. By the way, this is why a lot of people confuse classic and dramatic, is because they think of that intimidation as a dramatic, but really they might be classic, and vice versa. They might like structure and think they're a classic, but they're actually a dramatic in a different kind of structure. More on that when I do the dramatics. Looks-wise, some classics have this in their face. Not all of them. Some classics people will be in the classic body type family. So that's dramatic classics, soft classics. Not all the time though. This is a very small body type section, and a lot of people can have classic essence. It's a lot of the personality. But generally speaking, they typically could have a classic body type because they're moderate all over, moderate height, you know, nothing's extreme. It's balanced, it's symmetrical. With their faces, same thing. They'll have very balanced features, very symmetrical face. Nothing stands out. They don't have like a striking feature or very sharp, very soft. It's very middle. And it's not blunt the way naturals are. It's not very sharp or cutesy. It's very just poster child for standard beauty. The reason for that is because they are so symmetrical. It's kind of like classic beauty is that. It's just there's nothing to pinpoint, and altogether it all is balanced. And so that's why they say it's a very standardized poster child of beauty. All right, let's move on to how to infuse the classic essence into your clothing if you wish. Just remember that some of the things I showed today could have other essences in there, so just keep that in mind. It's really hard to find purely an essence. It's not impossible, but here we go. Number 1, academia styles. Now, this is kind of like an exaggerated aesthetic sometimes on Pinterest and on social media, but there are definitely ways people do wear this. However, I talked about it a little bit in the Ingenue in that like schoolgirl, schoolboy kind of academia, preppy. This is the adult version. This is the more matured version. It's the professor, not the student. So basically, if you could think what you would maybe wear if you were a professor at Harvard, this is what you would wear. Tweed blazers, maybe. Oxford shoes or loafers. Darker denims. You could look at, sweater vests. Rolled collared sweaters with patches. This has less of a I'm learning, I'm curious vibe, and more of the I know everything vibe. Not in a conceited way, just in a very matter-of-fact way, like a professor does. You want buttons that button all the way to the top, nothing open and relaxed. It's a little more severe or buttoned up. Lots of tweeds, lots of wool pieces. I actually have a funny story because I have classic essence, and I mean this story should tell it all. But in university, I used to wear lots of blazers. I love blazers. I wore them in high school and I wore them in university, and I didn't dress like a typical kind of university student because it just wasn't my vibe. But, a lot of university students look like they just woke up, they're like running to class, they're in their sweats or in their more relaxed, and I really wasn't that. So I got mistaken a lot for either I'm the professor, or once I was studying in the library, just minding my own business, and 2, not just 1, but 2 people came and asked me where this was because they thought I worked at the library. And I was 21 or 20, which is just hilarious. So that's kind of a good example of what that looks like. Number 2, English countryside styles. Now, this is such a good one because this is essentially like the country or the English kind of way is a lot of where this classic essence comes from. It's that royalty. And of course, the English countryside style does have a little bit of natural essence infused into it, but I still think it's predominantly classic, so I've included it in here. Classics are elegant, right? And they seem elegant and put together, and the English countryside definitely is that. When you think just countryside in general, you don't think of that. Like countryside where I live does not have that, but the English countryside does because the history of it. Nobility, royalty, they used to have these grandiose, huge estates in the countryside that they would have as their, one home, and they also had a home in the city. And there they are dressed up, even though they're in this very, luscious nature. And they're not the workers generally who are actually on the ground doing the work. They are dressed for the countryside for certain activities, but in a very dressed up way, in a very proper way. So therefore, we associate the style with someone who's very polished, who's very elegant, and who could afford to not be the worker and the one that actually owns the property. They'd go riding in their outfits. They have a naturalness, but it is predominantly classic because it's so polished and so put together. So personality-wise, someone who is put together, that feels and connects to that, is going to feel really at home in these kinds of looks. So here you think riding boots, riding jackets or hunting coats. The classic side, not an American hunting camo coat. Knitwear again, I did mention it in a lot of different essences, but here you want to think higher quality luxury knits. So cashmere, high quality wools mixed with those very polished outfits. Raincoats, plaid, scarves maybe. You're gonna have some leather here, yes. High quality jeans this time, so it's not as like that sturdy worker jean in the naturals, it's more of a higher quality jean. Think Ralph Lauren. That brand was patterned off of this idea. That is that kind of vibe. It's equestrian, I can't say that word. I'll put it up here. That brings me to number 3, which is old money, basically AKA higher quality luxury pieces. What is so appealing about this trend to people now that it was out is that it signifies wealth. It signifies that you have your shit together, that you look put together, that you got it figured out, and that's appealing to a lot of people. Both things are what classics come across as. So someone who has this essence and dresses in this is going to be like a lovely, beautiful harmony. We tend to think of well-off people as polished, they have the money to buy higher quality pieces and fabrics, and there's a reason we say old money is because now people who have new money don't do that as much. They dress a little bit more like the Silicon Valley, a little more laid back. They're not showing off their wealth. But old money and generational wealth, that was really the idea. And it comes from a system of knowing what class you're in. And it was a big deal to present what class you're in. So they needed to have really beautiful clothing so that you knew they were higher than you. But today we use it as kind of a way to be timeless and to just look put together, more mature and maybe more organized, like someone that you would really trust. And it gives you the illusion of wealth. So that's also fun. Basically it looks like you're so rich you could just go to a brunch in the middle of the day, middle of the week, and because you don't work. And we saw that a lot in, maybe politicians or families that were of generational wealth. You can think of heiresses, that kind of thing. They were always dressed in classic styles because they were showing that they were in a different class. Does this mean you need to be wealthy to dress like this? Absolutely not. There still is the idea that you are doing well in life or that you just know what you want. It looks very, I know things. And I think that that's very appealing to people. So for this, you can get high quality looking pieces. You do not need to break the bank though. It just needs to look. And in that, you want to look for things that kind of hold their structure a little bit more. They are thicker generally in the fabric, like cashmere-like or cashmeres. Thicker, more polished knits look really good. They'll look more higher quality. Wool coats or tweeds. You can also do leather, but this type of leather is much more polished. It's not rough or worn leather. It's very polished and shiny leather. And that's that timeless and typically in a very structured way, in a bag or in a belt. Suede, same thing. In a natural sense, you're going for the more like natural pure suede. In this, it's a bit more processed because, well, it is not processed, but it's the way it's put together in a piece is going to come across a bit more of a classic, and not, it's a bit more put together looking and physically than it is for something that's a bit more relaxed and slouchy like a natural. Metal and diamond details also work, but very minimally, nothing crazy, like this much metal, done. Sometimes that mob wife or the old money aesthetics you see on social media actually have a lot of romantic essence infused into them because they've got very lusciousness. So this one is actually more pared down. So you basically take that and pare it down to the more timeless pieces in that category. There's less of an extravagance and more of just polished. Speaking of, that brings me to number 4, which is minimal hair and makeup. So yes, very similar to the naturals in that it's minimal, but it is different. And what that means is a natural will look like no makeup looks, where you're not really looking like you wear makeup. A classic still looks like they're wearing makeup, but it's very polished. It's something that's timeless that they can wear in every occasion, basically, and maybe they'll slightly switch it up for something fancy. So there's not a lot going on, but there is makeup. It just looks like that person has put themselves together nicely, and just not in an extremely sensual way or an extremely dramatic, over the top way, not a cutesy way. So think like one bold classic lip, something in a red. It's not vampy and it's not super nude or super pink, hot pink. It's a red, a classic color, and a very simple eye. Or the reverse, like a winged liner, and that's it, and everything else is pared down. So things that can transcend time, and they aren't too trendy makeup looks. Same with hair. It's a very, timeless look. Soft waves or hair that's been coiffed, polished is essentially timeless. In most time periods, you will find some version of this. And it's basically no hair out of place for men and women. I do not wear my hair like a classic, generally speaking. I wear it more like a natural because I just like it that way. But if I were to have very, no frizz, essentially, no random pieces, they're all gonna be the same length. That's why people who wear very classic outfits like the blowout, because it's polished, it's put together, there's no frizz. It looks like your best day, your best hair day every day. And it doesn't matter if there's a side part or middle part. I don't think that actually matters. As long as it looks polished, then it's classic. And you can have super curly hair and still polish it. It just means it's not as wild looking. It'll just be cut in a way that adds that more moderate and structured look to it. Number 5, dependable patterns and prints. What the heck does that mean? So classics tend to like dependable things that they can depend on, that will be the same time and time again. So I like to think of classics as that. They'll use things in their homes that they know is gonna work every time. Any time period, this will never go out of fashion. Whether it's home decor, fashion, makeup, hair, it doesn't matter. And so going for patterns that they just know it's gonna look put together, it's gonna work, is easy, and it is timeless. And it's a way for them to add just a little bit of an intrigue to a very minimal outfit. So it's not something that's super extravagant, and it's not something that's super minimal that there's zero intrigue. It's just a little bit of something that gives it, intrigue, but it is done in a way that is very predictable. They can predict that this will work. Because in their lives, they may not be extremely spontaneous and do like when things are somewhat predictable. It's very comforting to a classic. So think tartans, checks, stripes, houndstooth, herringbone. These are all patterns and prints that just don't go out of style. Every season there's a version of this out there. If you wore this 10 years ago and wore it again in another 10, 20 years, you will always look good. Number 6, minimalism at its finest. So with this theme of predictability, you can think of that as also the minimalism thing. They want to rely on colors and mix of colors that are just going to look very chic, very put together, very classy, very luxurious. But they aren't extremely showy and they're not necessarily boring. So that could be head to toe monochromatic. It could be 1 or 2 tones. So 2 tones of brown, 2 tones of berries or grays. Doesn't matter as long as it feels like it's very cohesive. And then the opposites, you could do black and white, right? 2 very different colors but feel very neutral-like. They love neutrals because they are dependable, they are easy, and they are timeless. There's always a neutral, and there's a neutral in every single sub-season. So anyone, any coloring can wear neutrals. So it's easy. There's just a simple elegance to it. And therefore, when you go to speak to someone who's dressed like this, you kind of know you're gonna get someone well-spoken or someone who's going to be not erratic or outgoing or very shy, just almost like professional in a way. Okay, so that means you could basically wear, well, anyone could wear this, but you're gonna wear the neutrals in your sub-season and just ensure that you're following your contrast. So don't wear black if black is not your color. No. That will have the opposite effect on you if you're trying to look timeless and chic and black is not your color. If brown is your color, that'll have the same effect as someone who looks really good in black. Lastly, I find that just kind of one accessory for a classic is really common. So like a really nice watch or a nice scarf or, you know, dainty minimal jewelry, but it's not all at once. That can be a little too much. They can, but it starts to bring in other essences when you do that. So, or one hat, right? It's put together, it kind of finishes off the outfit, but it's not extravagant. It's not dramatic or over the top or too quirky. And lastly, the put togetherness. That can be achieved by structure. But is it structure? This is how so many people get confused between dramatics and classics. Structure, yes, but it's actually more tailoring and put togetherness. Dramatics look good in structure. Classics look good in things that feel like they're put together. They can be drapey. They can be, you know, looser and flowier, but they are always done in a put together fashion. Like you can wear a poncho or you could wear, you know, a scarf that's draped on it, but if it looks put together, that's classic. Dramatics wouldn't really have that. There's more of a structure and intensity there. So it's not oversized, it's not extremely sharp, but it's not extremely drapey or extremely soft. It's very moderate, and it always is put together by maybe having a waist, or it's done in a moderate sense that doesn't feel overwhelming, and it's all balanced. That's what that means, put togetherness, not extreme structure, the way we think in a dramatic. And that's it. That's classics. Just a little intro. There's going to be, like I said, with every single essence video, there's going to be so much more about the essences. And I love essences, so I cannot wait to get into it. I want to show you mixes, so on. If you're having any trouble figuring out your essences, your coloring, or your body type, I offer all those services and more, and custom packages All my links and information is down below, or you could just email me. I hope this video was interesting and helpful for you. If you are a classic, please let me know down below. I love to hear it. Or what your essence blend is in general, I also love knowing. I hope you all have a beautiful and classic day.